Talking to your kids about sex is usually one of those topics that make most parents squirm. And there's a good reason for that. It takes us right back to our childhood. For most of us, the chat or lack of it that we may have had with our parents was one that was probably really quite limited in its information and probably awkward in its delivery. However, that doesn't mean that we need to repeat history. And if there was ever a time to be raising sexually educated children, then it is now. Thanks to the internet, children are exposed to sexual images and videos in a way before their brains can comprehend what is actually happening. So with the average age of first exposure to pornography around 11 years of age, kids are simply unprepared to distinguish the message they encounter in porn. And without the knowledge or understanding of what a respectful, consenting, intimate relationship is, pornography then becomes a major source for youth to learn about sex. And we're also seeing that children are going through puberty at a younger age, and educating kids around what is happening in their bodies helps them to feel more confident around this transition in their lives. So teaching sex education to children isn't about one chat, it's about many conversations, starting when they're really young. So from teaching toddlers the proper names for body parts and helping them understand what part of their bodies are private, we're helping to create an awareness and safety around their bodies. We're also beginning a conversation of a young age that instills in our children that our growing bodies are a normal thing and it's okay for us to talk about. Talking about consent from a young age also really instills in children their rights around their bodies and helps them to establish a voice that can say no if something doesn't feel right for them. So we can do this with young kids by not making them kiss and hug adults to say hello or goodbye, and always giving our children the option to choose if they would like to touch someone, instilling that barometer of honouring themselves. Now, how many of us had to kiss old Aunt Jackie at family catch-ups and we hated it because she smelt funny? And so what we don't want to do is do the same thing for our kids. Teaching them to our children of an early age helps them to navigate these teenage years, which can also be tricky around exploring sex. So when they have a strong compass on what feels okay and what doesn't, then they're more likely to trust themselves in situations and actually say what they need. Simple steps in talking to your kids about sex. Firstly, don't try to cover everything all at once. It's about lots of little talks. You can use teachable moments such as seeing a pregnant woman. It can become a great conversation starter with a 4-year-old about where babies grow and how they're actually born. Or talking to a 9-year-old about pregnancy might involve a bit more of an in-depth conversation around conception and birth. At each age, it's a really good idea to keep it simple and talk more about the biology involved. Until children start to go through puberty, most of the conversations around sex and sexuality are really all about science, not so much about emotions and intimacy. So don't stress if you say too much. If they don't understand or they're not interested, they'll often forget and they'll ask again when they're ready to hear it. I've had many of the same conversations with my kids over the years as they've grown, and each time we've talked about similar things, but often with a bit of added depth to it. They take in the information when they're actually ready. So keep it light and remember, it's a friendly chat, definitely not a lecture. The more comfortable you are with the conversation, the more at ease they'll be and the more likely they are to ask more questions. We want them to actually come to you for the facts, not to the internet. And we also want to be aware of not setting up any shame around sex and sexuality. So don't be surprised or shocked if they're asking a specific question. It means that they're either naturally curious or maybe they've heard something in the playground or from their mates. So satisfy their curiosity by answering them. And if you don't know how to answer, say, "That's a really great question. Let me get back to you." And then go and find the answer and make sure you do get back to them. Books are a wonderful way to start the conversation around sex, bodies, sexuality, all those kind of things. From looking at picture books with little kids about bodies to great factual books for puberty, for preteens. These are a great way to facilitate open chats with your children. Now, you may feel embarrassed having these conversations, but the more you talk about it, the less embarrassed you'll actually feel. So be sure to keep checking in with your own triggers and angst around this topic. It's really good to talk to someone about how it makes you feel or look at any wounds you may have around sexuality. Kids learn about relationships and sexuality from us, so be aware of modeling good, intimate relationships. Be playful, set boundaries, and always be respectful to yourself and your partner. Talk about your own body in a way that is positive and model great self-care. This teaches our children about how they can respect their own bodies. And as always in parenting, kids do what we do, not what we say. So our goal is to raise sexually aware teens who have good boundaries, respect their partners, and explore safely so they can experience pleasure, intimacy, and relationships in a healthy and satisfying way. So start chatting now.